Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. Pardon my voice, I'm still getting over this head gunk and cold and whatnot, but it really is me, I promise. So, I'm going to do a review today of Swamp Thing Halloween Horror. This is a special Halloween edition of DC's 100-page comic giants, which are exclusive to Walmart. I have reviewed a bunch of these in the past. They are pretty hard to find usually. Sometimes you'll run across a Walmart that has a bunch of them out. They never have them out on time. They always have to have them hidden over in their little collector's section. It's really bad marketing across the board. The issues themselves have been hit or miss. Usually each issue includes some really cool stories, one or two, and then some really awful stories. But this one looked great. It looked, Halloween special. That's going to be fun. This was the real selling point. Night of the Reaper. That is a classic Batman story that I would have bought a book 3 times this size if it included that story, because I don't know if I readily have that story anywhere I can get to it. It might be somewhere in storage, the old comic. But anyway, some great stuff in here, some stuff in here, but let's go through and talk about a little bit of it. I won't spoil anything. The original story we have is a Swamp Thing tale by Brian Azzarello and art by Greg Capullo. The art is phenomenal. Greg Capullo is a great artist, and I love he draws Swamp Thing himself just wonderfully. He's got that really good knack for good monsters, the textures and the light and everything like that. I love that. I do the colors here for that one, because the colors are really great in this tale too. Colors were FCO Placinka. I'm not really familiar with that person, but I like the colors. I like the colors. I like this. I don't know a lot about Swamp Thing, the character. I know the origin of Swamp Thing and whatnot. That's included in the back of this issue too. And I know them as he's shown up in other stories, in Justice Leagues or whatever. He's in Justice League Dark now, which is a lot of fun. But I never really followed his Alan Moore runs, the iconic runs that people talk about. He was never my character necessarily. So I don't know a lot about him. But in this story, it seems to be in current continuity, because he ends up fighting these creatures who are very similar to the Upside Down Man, which was one of the major villains in the current Justice League Dark run. That's what they look like, and I believe the things he says there at the end have to do with that story arc as well. I don't know who this girl is, though. I'm happy to have her. Redheaded goth girl, that's pretty much every girl I ever had a crush on in the 90s, so she's drawn very lovely. I like the idea of her story through here, but I don't know who she is. He calls her Twiglet. Is this just a manifestation of his powers? Is she not really an entity at all? Or is it a character in his stories that I just don't know about? Again, so I can't really speak to how well the character is handled in this story or whatever. Story itself, it's not really, some stuff happens. It's more sort of a sketch than a story in terms of an arc or whatever. There's no real character progression for anybody in it, but, good enough, good enough. That art is good enough, if nothing else, so that was awesome. Then, oh boy, we get a Blue Devil story. Now that's great. Blue Devil story, wonderful. He's such an underutilized character. Ian Churchill does some amazing art, but you know what I'm about to say, right? You know what I'm about to say. Look at that writer. Why does Dan Didio think he can write, and why does he insist on shoving his little stories into these specials? He's just pure ego. This is the most subpar story. I'm going to walk you through it. I actually reviewed this story as it was a part of the DC Infinity Halloween special from 2006. That was part of my 31 Days of Halloween last year. And it's a comic that has a cool premise. It's the villains of Arkham Asylum getting ready to escape, and they're waiting on something in order for their escape to go through, some door to open or whatever like that. So they're telling each other these stories on Halloween night. And this is one of the stories that one of these villains tells here. So, so it starts out with a cool idea. I like the fact that the Blue Devil is dressed up as Batman, and he claims that that's what's scaring people away. The children keep dropping their candy. He's there with the Enchantress, and they keep eating their candy. So, fun premise, whatever. This is where Dan Didio goes with the story. This is what he thinks would make a cool story idea. This is what he thinks is a funny joke, guys. He's going to bring in 2 characters and make it out that they're Linus and Charlie Brown from the Great Pumpkin story. This is his joke. This is his joke. And he even names them something akin to Charlie and Linus. Harley and Dennis instead of Charlie and Linus. And Harley, excuse me, is upset because Daniel, the Blue Devil, when he was younger, stole the little red-headed girl from him. And he says, "Oh, good grief. Ha, ha, ha. That's good job there, Dan Didio." And see, here's the real kicker about this story. This story was originally in the same book with this next story as it is now. This next story is called Trick or Treat, but it's written backwards because this is a Zatanna tale. And check out that, Paul Dini. Paul Dini takes Dan Didio to freaking school when it comes to writing. I'm almost embarrassed for Dan Didio to have his story twice now appear in a collection right next to Paul Dini's, because people read this and they think, what, okay, art was cool. Then they get to a Paul Dini story, nice Dustin Nguyen art there, and oh my goodness. So this story is told by Scarecrow. Of course, he's going to tell a story dealing with fear toxins, and the basic premise is this young group of punks are putting some of Scarecrow's fear toxin into their trick-or-treat candy. And that affects this boy very severely, obviously. Zatanna's in the hospital performing for some kids the night of Halloween, and she sees the effects, so she goes after these people. And oh my gosh, it's really interesting because in the story, she goes back after these punks who are putting this stuff in the candy. She goes back after them hard. I mean, she really... I'm not going to show you too much because I don't want to ruin it, but she really severely punishes these guys. And some of the villains are even asking Scarecrow, that can't be, that's not Zatanna's style. And Scarecrow says, oh, no, she did it. The cool thing about that was these stories are from the villains' perspectives. They were telling you the stories, so you can fudge little things like that. Maybe that wasn't exactly what happened, but you can get away with telling the story because it's Jonathan Crane telling the story like that, which makes sense. So it's a really cool story. I mean, the end of it, you get a nice sense of completion, you get the threat, you get the hero coming in and taking care of the threat, and in the end, there's a nice little thematic tie-up, too. It's a really solid story, and especially coming after Dan Didio's little knock-knock joke of a story. Anyway, then we have another one from the same collection. This is Poison Ivy telling a story about Superman encountering some kryptonite-fueled zombies. Fun story. And we've got some great art. Love that art. So, lots of little things cool in this collection. This one was neat. This one was from another compilation. We have the Elongated Man telling a Sleepy Hollow type story with Dr. Jonathan Crane as the Ichabod Crane. So that makes perfect sense. But here's the other big heavy hitter. So we have the Paul Dini story, and now we have a J. Michael Straczynski story. So as arrogant as he comes off on Twitter, he knows how to write. I mean, I first fell in love with his writing watching Masters of the Universe episodes, same place I fell in love with Paul Dini's writing as a child, and then coming up and reading their comic books, of course, J. Michael Straczynski and Babylon 5 and all of that stuff. And he writes an amazing story called Night Gods, and it's a team-up of the Demon and Aquaman. And apparently every year on this night, certain dark entities from another dimension try to force their way through underwater, and they have to team up once a year to stop this. And it is a really great story. It's pretty long, too, for one of these issues. And it really involves you, and it's a great... You get to see Aquaman shine really well, so that's awesome. Again, don't want to show you too much there to ruin it for you. I recommend you come pick it up. Then we have The Great Night of the Reaper. You see there art by Neil Adams, and this was from the Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil age. Dick Giordano there as well contributing. And it's from an idea by Bernie Wrightson. I mean, how many more amazing people can you fit in these credits? Oh yeah, Harlan Ellison. And then edited by Julius Schwartz. I mean, this is a golden... I know it's not Batman Golden Age, but for me, this is the golden age of Batman. This era of Denny O'Neil writing, Neil Adams art, that right on up through the 90s and the Norm Brayfogle, that's really the most iconic Batman for me, period. That's my Batman, absolutely. And look at that opening splash page. I mean, talk about a hook. You see that and you gotta read. First of all, amazingly creepy and engaging picture. You got Batman staked to a tree in this haunted moon and house and everything, and that's just gorgeous. You're gonna read that. You're gonna find out what's going on. And it's great. It's a good classic story. There are a lot of little cameos by some of the writers there and artists, a lot of little funny in-jokes. But we have Dick Grayson with his college buddies, and certain things happen, and they have to fight this villain known as the Reaper, hence Night of the Reaper. I don't want to give away too much, but I will say this in the end. Now, my audience tends to appreciate Batman, I know from the live streams, but if you stumble upon this video and you think Ben Affleck is Batman, and perhaps the Batman as he will be portrayed in the new Titan series, if you think that's Batman, you won't understand this story at all, because you don't really know who Batman is. In the end of this story, Batman, again, I don't want to show you the arc, so I don't want to ruin it for you, but he comes to a point where he is face to face with this murderer, this person who's murdered several people that night, and it's affected Batman deeply, because these were innocents, and he wasn't able to save them, and he's really affected by this, and he hunts this villain down, he finally has this villain, and he chooses not to kill the villain because that's not what he does. That's not justice. So I'm going to read this to you. I don't want to show it to you because I don't want to ruin too much of it. I know I'm reading it to you anyway, but Batman says, "True, I have no right to judge, neither have you. There's not enough water in that stream to wash the guilt from anyone who presumes to take the life of another." And then the villain makes an argument about how he's been so wronged and all the sorrow and years that he was tortured and whatnot. And then Batman has some internal thoughts and says, "He's strong with the strength of madness. Something in me wants to let him go. In him I see some of myself. Like him, I lost my parents to evil. No, his way is wrong." He almost considers it for a second, but says, "No, I can't go down that road. His way is wrong. That's evil." And that is just the quintessential Batman. That's his, he will not kill. He's a vigilante only because of Gotham City's police force is so corrupt. He's fighting criminals who are a cowardly and superstitious lot, etc. So that's just a beautiful, wonderful story to include, makes it a must-have, and that would be enough, but it's not quite enough, because as I said in the beginning, we cap it all off with a origin of Swamp Thing. And this is written by the great Len Wein, another must-have, and this is his origin. And again, even though I'm not an expert on Swamp Thing at all, I do prefer these earlier Swamp Thing stories that I've read, in which he's more of a man. He's the Swamp Thing, he's become the Swamp Thing, and he's certainly not human anymore. He has these powers, these abilities, he certainly looks different, his body's changed, but there's still a sense of humanity, there's still a sense of that pathos and the Beauty and the Beast type stories too, with him and his lost love. So those stories just had a great appeal that some of the modern iterations I've read deal with him as more of, now he's there's no more of the man left, he's an elemental spirit now, and this and that. And you know, there are cool elements to that in terms of character progression. I'm not saying he has to be that Wolfman type pathos-ridden character forever, but you start talking about his humanity is wiped away, then I'm not interested in a character who no longer has humanity anymore, even if that's not actually the case in the story. Stop talking like it is. So anyway, great special. Pick it up, go to Walmart, and if you see it, hopefully you will. It's in the collector's section, usually up there somewhere near the registers. Sometimes they have them back in the back near the rear restroom or the magazines or something like that. So I am definitely going to stack it on the shelf with my other Halloween comic specials and whatnot. Tonight, Saturday night, me and my trusty TA, Big Al, will be back for our Office Hours live stream that I missed this past Thursday night because of this blasted cold. But we will be there tonight, 11:30 p.m. EST, talking about our favorite and your favorite Boogeyman stories. So come join the fun there. And a lot more to come from this month and just in the future on my channel. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you for liking. Check out the Patreon. The links in the description or at the end of the video. I very much appreciate everyone's support. Helps me be able to spend more time on the channel. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the Halloween stories you love. Thanks for watching.